On today's episode, grab your muskets and umbrellas as we head into a battle at the wet Waterloo in 1815, with one of history's greatest military leaders who used speed and charisma to revolutionise war in Europe. The Battle of Waterloo was the final battle of the revolutionary Napoleonic Wars, wars which lasted for 22 years, from 1793 to 1815, with a short intermission in 1802 to 1803. Put simply, conflict between France and several European monarchies dominated for over 2 decades. As with most battles, the Battle of Waterloo happened in, you guessed it, Waterloo, a village to the southeast of Brussels. This provided Wellington with the type of ground he needed to defeat the battlefield tactics which Napoleon and his marshals had developed. There was a ridge behind which he could hide his forces from the massed batteries of Napoleon's artillery, and both Napoleon's infantry and cavalry had to come up the hill to engage him. With any battle, there is always one person who starts the fight, and with Waterloo, it's none other than Napoleon. No, not that Napoleon, this Napoleon. Franco-Corsican Napoleon Bonaparte, later Napoleon I, was named by British newspapers as the Great Disturber, because by 1814 he'd already waged wars and won in the name of revolution. To put simply, reforming government, a higher education system, a central bank, law codes and roads in France, the Great Disturber had been exiled in 1814 to Elba, but Napoleon managed to escape after 10 months and arrived at Antibes. I don't know about you, but if I wanted to exile someone, I wouldn't exile them with 1,000 men of his old guard, his well-trained, most experienced honour guard for his personal protection. With Napoleon back in action, the newly reinstated Bourbon regime's army crumbled when they met him in early March in 1815. They defected to him, as after all, it was his army just 10 months before. Napoleon had 2 natural things that made him a leader: charisma and speed. And with those 2 things, he had amassed a Napoleonic army of 200,000 men with a further 60,000 men under training on the border of Belgium by May 1815. Not bad for someone who had been banished to another country a few months ago with just 1,000 close comrades for company. This wasn't Napoleon's first rodeo, so he looked at the armies deployed around him to determine the best battle tactic, and decided to defeat his enemies one at a time to give him a superior force over his enemy of close to 2 to 1. Equally important, this operational plan would mean that the initiative would remain in his hands. The opposing armies were deployed based on logistical needs. Put simply, the deployment map was based on where the army in question received their supplies from. On the morning of June 15th, Napoleon attacked a Prussian army corps first at Charolais, forcing them to retreat to the main Prussian army at Ligny. But he sent a corps of 30,000 men and a mini army with artillery, cavalry and infantry under Marshal Ney to guard his left flank against any British interference. On June 16th, Napoleon got his wish, facing 80,000 Prussians in battle at Ligny. Ironically, just 3 years earlier in 1812, the Prussians were fighting for Napoleon. These Prussians were part of an allied army, the 7th Coalition attempting to eradicate Napoleon. It goes without saying, for this to be the 7th Coalition, the previous 6 coalitions had failed. Furthermore, the 80,000 Prussian men were not of the same quality he once commanded, which would have thrilled Napoleon. Heavy casualties for both Napoleon and Prussian armies, but a tactical win for the French. Remarkably, the Prussian commander Prince Blucher fell off of his horse and was trampled by his own cavalry. Who needs enemies when you have an army like this? After the battle at Ligny, Gneisenau, chief of staff of the Prussian army, wanted to retreat east towards Prussia. Yet Prince Blucher refused and insisted they march west to meet the Duke of Wellington of Great Britain. Honour trumped pragmatism, and Napoleon's operational concept of defeat in detail was scuppered at this key decision of the entire campaign made by the Allies. But while Gneisenau had Wellington's back in this coalition, the British had their own problems. Their most experienced units were on the other side of the Atlantic fighting the Americans. So much so, Wellington had been forced to appoint the Prince of Orange as one of his corps commanders as a politically acceptable decision to support the Netherlands. yet it was military disastrous. Essentially, he was useless as an Orange in battle. And the Prince of Orange, in the afternoon of the 16th of June, arrived at an important crossroads of Quatre Bras, bumping into Marshal Ney protecting the left flank of the French army. Remember when Napoleon sent a corps to protect the left flank? Good job he did, as the Prince of Orange has arrived as the British interference he had planned for. A meeting engagement such as this fed into unplanned battle. The Prince of Orange retreated towards Waterloo. The 17th of June was a day of movement, and the British continued to fall back to that position just southeast of Brussels. But you forgot to bring your umbrella, didn't you? That afternoon, rain began to fall, making both armies wet and miserable. Especially Napoleon, who was sick. His operational objective of dividing his enemies had worked. But with the weather delaying battle, it meant the coalition, the British, the Prussians, and the Anglo-Dutch armies were catching up and continuing to plan to unite together to battle Napoleon and his French army. And with the wet weather, it was impossible to fight a battle, as neither artillery nor muskets would function in the rain. Zoot! By the end of the day, Wellington's army and Napoleon's army were concentrating opposite each other at Waterloo, waiting for the wet weather to wash away. Put simply, the opposing sides watched, waited, and eyeballed each other until battle. Then, on June 18th, battle finally commenced at midday. But while the Prussians seemed a poor fighting quality to Napoleon, from 1809 to 1814, Wellington had learnt how to master Napoleonic battle tactics with great success. And with the Prussians keeping their word to Wellington and arriving to join the battle, it stacked the odds against Napoleon. And even though Wellington's forces were not the best, they were trained enough to defend when Napoleon's army attacked, hid behind a hill to avoid artillery, and after firing 3 volleys a minute to the French too, and finished the job with a bayonet with guts behind it. And so, at the Battle of Waterloo, the French and Napoleon were comprehensively defeated by Wellington and his 7th Coalition, winning the war. Though unlike the song, I doubt Napoleon promised to love him forevermore. And Napoleon? Within a fortnight of the Battle of Waterloo, he was in the hands of the Royal Navy, and by the next month, he was on his way to St. Helena, where he couldn't escape this time, even if he wanted to. Napoleon died in 1821. Wellington, 40 years of age at the time of battle, went on to a distinguished political career and died in 1842. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and watch our next episode.